Now, as we begin this summit, ladies and gentlemen, we have our first segment, Manufacturing and Heavy Engineering, for which we have a very exciting panel discussion lined up on the topic, Disrupting the Norm, Building a State-of-the-Art Ecosystem to Foster Operational Excellence. So no matter how great the business strategy is, if the operations functions can't meet the mark, it's game over. It is of utmost importance for organizations to practice effectively supply chain and manufacturing operations to translate business strategies into practical plans. An organization needs ways to improve operational performance across complex value chains, and the need of the hour is to employ a programmatic approach that can help improve top-line growth, lower cost, reduce response times, and increase productivity. So this panel will discuss and shall not be only limited to the new strategies being adopted in demand planning, distribution network, as well as logistics optimization, but it will also discuss the tactics to transform the inbound supply chain structure. And we will also discuss how important is it for manufacturers to increase supply chain flexibility as well as agility. And this panel will also touch upon the fast delivery, excellent after-sales services, as well as the increased sustainability. And we will figure out whether they are the mantra to achieve operational excellence or whether there is so much more to it. We will also be discussing the people side of M&E supply chain and also reverse logistic to extend the life cycle of products and whether if it is a solution to environmental as well as ecological problems. And now to take this discussion further, joining us up on stage is our expert set of panelists. So please join me in welcoming with a louder round of applause, Mr. Rajasekhara, Reddy, Avthu, Group Head Supply Chain Management, APMEA, Apollo Tyres. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I would request you to please join us on the stage and kindly have a seat at the dais. May I request, yes sir, please, all the panelists to kindly walk on the stage from that side. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Anil Shipley, Executive President, Chief Supply Chain Officer, Polycab India. Mr. Rajesh Gupta, Head Supply Chain, JK Tyre and Industries. Mr. Ashwani Bhargava, Senior Director, Supply Chain, Boeing. Very warm welcome to all of you. Mr. Prasanna Pahade, Vice President, Auto and Farm Business, Mahindra Logistics. And to bring out all the perspectives and drive the conversation, please join me in welcoming our moderator, Mr. Sudipta Ghosh, Leader Data and Analytics, Leader Manufacturing Sector, PwC India. A very warm welcome to all the panelists. We are really looking forward to this discussion. So may I now hand it over to Sudipta.
Thank you very much for that great introduction and even a tee up to the topic for this morning today. This is something which is extremely relevant and extremely pertinent in today's times. When we are talking about supply chain, we know that it is one part or the most important part of an organization where you are creating the product, you are distributing the product, you are delivering the product, and after the delivery, you are also taking feedback about the product, and then the cycle goes on. So this is effectively the entire backbone of an organization, if I can put it that way. And it becomes even more so important in the heavy engineering and manufacturing space where it becomes absolutely critical that the right kind of product gets delivered to the right customers and you know the services and everything else is taken care of. Adding to the complication is the fact that there will be a lot of stakeholders which will be involved in the whole process. It is not just the different departments in the organization, from procurement to production to distribution to sales and after sales. It's also about the ecosystem of logistics providers, ecosystem of suppliers and vendors who become absolutely critical for managing this entire end-to-end show, if I may call it, which adds to the complexity. This is a function which is 24/7. This is a function which is absolutely critical for even just the survival of a business. And to add to more problems, we have huge amount of disruption which is coming up in the external environment. These disruptions could be in the form of geopolitical challenges. These disruptions could be in the form of environmental factors. These disruptions could also be because of the regulatory factors and other events. And hence, if you did not have enough to sort out, I mean, the problems keep coming over and over, right? So obviously we can keep talking a lot about the problems, but I think what we'll all be interested to hear is how are we solving these problems on a day-to-day basis. And some of our esteemed panelists over here would be able to share their experience of how they are dealing with their organization, and hence, we will kind of open it up in that sense, right? So maybe what I'll do is that I'll kind of open this up with Anil. If you can, begin this session, and just give a perspective from your side, Anil, that given the fact that there are so many challenges and so many issues which we are all facing from a supply chain perspective, what will be some of the factors which will help us to navigate through all these mess, or navigate through all these challenges which we are facing today? Maybe that will be a good way to start.
Good morning. Thank you, Sudipta, for your opening question. I will start with a little anecdotal direction. You've all seen, heard about Alice in Wonderland. Have you read about it in your childhood? Okay. So when Alice was going in the forest, she was lost, obviously, and she was going left and right, and she comes to a roundabout. And at the roundabout, there's a cat there. So Alice asks the cat, "Which way should I go?" The cat replies, "It depends where you want to go." So Alice says, "I don't know where I want to go." So the cat replies, "Then you can take any road, it doesn't matter." Now, with that background, if I want to address any of this, I must know where I want to be today, tomorrow, or a year ahead. For that, the first thing I must know is who is my customer and what does he look like. In today's time, my customer is the one guy who's well-read, digitally connected, he compares cost, he compares quality, and 24/7. And if he doesn't like it, he should return. Right? What about the environment? The environment is ever changing. There's war, there's COVID, and there's everything. So it is flux, it's a big flux. Will the old ways work in this scenario? Have you seen any examples of old ways not working? It's very evident. You see any apparel industry, you see any industry, shoe industry, off-season sales, 80% discount, 90% discount. What does it mean? Somebody has messed up. It has not been planned well. Or somebody really could not plan well because there was no way to forecast in this flux. There was no way to forecast in this flux. So the old proactive way of making a list, getting a sales forecast, drilling down to items, manufacturing the items will not work at all. We do not need a proactive, used to be looked upon, we need a proactive way. No, you need an agile, a reactive system, which can react in a very short time to the customer need. And it has been known in various terms by names of agile, by names of fast reacting, or a reactive system itself. Is it possible? Should we look at it in logistics separate and SCM separate? By the way, what is SCM? According to the definition, which should be, SCM is from concept to delivery is SCM. Can the manufacturing not be aligned to what the customer needs? Should the purchase not be aligned to what the customer needs? So what do I make? Whatever the customer wants. Where should it be? Wherever the customer wants. How much it should be? As much as he takes. So customer centricity and designing it and connecting each and every node will be the only way it will work. Can costing be different? No, costing cannot be different because costing changes. The costs are going up and down. So costing also has to be online. It must change with the current times. Can purchase be different? No, purchase also has to be, you only buy what is needed. If you do that in some way, the chances of obsolescence go down, customer service improves, and what do we measure? You should measure availability, that the material is available all the time, everywhere. Where it should be available? 731 districts of the country, each and everywhere. If we can make a system that integrated, you can understand where it can go. I don't buy anything by forecast. I only buy what is moving. So whatever sells, I buy more, and I manufacture more, and I supply more. How it is to be done, it is possible to do. That's a different discussion, but it is possible to do, and many companies have done it. Many companies have done it. What is the impact? The impact is your WIP goes down, your inventories go down, your turn improves, and your return on investment improves. And that's what you're looking at. The customer service improves. So it's win-win for all the people who are involved in that. That's what I would like to start with.
No, thank you very much, Anil, for those opening words. And I think an important part which you mentioned was being very agile and being able to quickly course correct, as opposed to constantly, predicting for the long term and then getting it all wrong. And you also mentioned about the customer centricity. Now, taking this conversation forward, maybe I would like to reach out to, Prasanna, in terms of, because what we are looking at is that supply chain as a function has got so many different aspects to look after. You have got multiple KPIs. You have customer on one side, you have distribution on one side, you have service quality on one side, you have cost on one side, and so many things, right? Is there a way through all this to prioritize what should be, or some way to figure out how do you put all your priorities in the right order as far as the KPIs are concerned? Because at the end of the day, when you are assigning responsibilities to people, you also have to give them a direction. What is it that they should be doing? And complexity is that some of these KPIs even conflict with each other.
Yep.
So would want to hear your perspective, because Tyres is such a complex industry, then you must be facing these kind of challenges.
Yeah. So I think there are many colleagues who come from manufacturing background. So I think all of you heard about safety, productivity, quality, delivery, cost, and morale, the classic framework of SQP, QDCM. So I think those are basic KPIs which are relevant whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're doing warehousing, whether you're doing transportation. But that's like for the power. I think Anil used the analogy of the Alice in Wonderland, and that's where this becomes interesting. The service provider, the shipper, you need to sit together and decide what's important for you. I mean, just to give an example, today if I take transportation, the cost per kg can vary from 3 rupees to 200 rupees. So in logistics, everything is possible. It comes at a price, and there's a choice to be made. So if it is extremely critical spare part, maybe what Boeing is needing they would not mind even sending a charter plane to get that fixed. But on the other hand, there are commodities where even a paisa per kg can impact what happens to the dynamic. So the important thing is basic KPIs, I think everyone has to follow. Safety is important, quality is important. After that, it's a choice of what your supply chain is made to drive at. What's the end objective you're looking at? And depending on that, then we end up prioritizing those KPIs over many others. If not, there's a dissonance. So your customer wants something else and you're solving for something else. As we just heard in the CEO keynote address there, I think there are so many parameters one can look at. So that's how we look at it in manufacturing.
Absolutely. I think there are so many parameters, and I think you start with the customer, you look at the prioritization, and then you figure out, what is it that we need to do. Turning this conversation to the next level, maybe Ashwani, I'll try to, pick your brains there, that you are in a sector where the demand is not a problem, right? We have seen that with the multiple orders which has kind of made the headline news in the last 3 months itself. You should be a happy man that you have enough demand, right? But maybe you are also a worried man because how do you supply, right? So to understand your perspective from an industry which has to be absolutely precise in what you are delivering, because safety and quality is of paramount importance. At the same time, the sheer complexity of bringing everything together and honoring the time commitment becomes such an important factor for you. So wanted to hear your perspective in terms of what are some of the key takeaways and some examples which you can share, which will help people to understand how are you or your sector is tackling some of the challenges and opportunities which is being thrown up in this sector?
So no, thank you, Sudipta. By the way, you're right. I mean, when I introduce myself to people these days, I'm supply chain leader for Boeing. The first reaction is I'm sorry because supply chain is disrupted. But just to lay out the context, what we do here is we source about $1 billion every year from India. That is known in the public, that a lot of people know what we source, and people would have seen anywhere from the Apache attack helicopter fuselage to the smaller parts go out of India. But what people may not be aware of is that Boeing company is relying on India's supply chain to handle some of the activities which were otherwise handled out of US. For example, the transportation, warehousing, and logistics. We do it for India, but we do it for the globe also. We are doing the inventory management, we're doing the tooling management, and whatever I'm talking about, 99.99% of what we do is for the globe. So we are making in India for the globe already, which is what the theme is right now. We do demand and supply planning. We have the procurement centers in India. We do sustainability management out of India. This is not something that we do with suppliers. I mean, this is the work that we do with our own team members in India. Now, the catch here is, how does it relate to the theme that we have? Very appropriate. In today's world, as you rightly said, in our world, demand is not a problem. The problem is supply. And you would have heard about the landmark deals from Air India, from Indigo, and some of these deals are decided not on the price, but our ability to deliver. Which is why in our world, what becomes more important is operational excellence, which is what the theme is all about. What becomes important is our ability to deliver. And the reason we are doing all of this here is because even in pandemic, India has been one of the very few regions in the world that has not disrupted the production system in Boeing. So people are relying on us. Now, how did that happen? It's not happening because you're reading the books. In some cases, I disagree with some of the thoughts that have been presented. We have gone back to the basics. We have gone back to what people, moved away from, like inventory build-up and so forth. So we'll talk about that. But I think the key in today's world is operational excellence. When you go to Google and search, it'll talk about Industry 4.0 and so forth. But there has to be a real-time management also, which is what operational excellence is all about. So there are several tools, there are several ways of doing it, but we have been able to accomplish that in Boeing out of India. And we have no plans stopping or slowing down. I think it's an exciting time to be in supply chain. Disruption is the only thing which is constant. So we got to adapt ourselves to that. Thanks.
No, thank you very much for that. I think it's very important. That aspect which you brought about was on the operational excellence piece, and maybe we will probably take it forward in terms of what exactly does that mean. Maybe I'll now invite Rajesh in terms of your vast experience in this manufacturing space, in terms of talking a few things about what is it that you are seeing are some of the trends or some of the areas where organizations need to focus to drive this kind of operational excellence, which Ashwani was talking about.
Namaste and thank you, Sudipta. Last 3 to 4 years has been the challenge for the entire world. All of us know it. Lot of disruptions and lot of things which were not possible became possible. Two things which are coming out very, very clearly is that the investment in infrastructure. When I am saying infrastructure, it is two types. One is physical infrastructure. Second is information flow infrastructure. So whether it is countries, whether it is companies, everyone has to spend in this area. And another thing you must have observed, particularly all the key politicians of the world, 5 major powers as well as India, the leaders are talking about supply chain. See, never in the last maybe 70 years or 80 years or maybe after Second World War, nobody talked about supply chain so much at global level as it is being talked about now. Even during the last visit of our Prime Minister to US, they were also talking about the supply chain. So it is so important. Same is the case with all the companies. That are we going to really spend? The companies are looking at, in our own case, we have looked at various areas. That and earlier supply chain used to be like a store and then just you can say sideway department. Bache guche log, they will come to the stores like that. That was the mindset, store, warehouse, or whatever name you call. But now it is becoming like a science. They are realizing that whatever money is saved by supply chain is directly adding to the profit. Lot of work on IT. If you see like going forward, maybe 4 years, 5 years, AI is going to play a very, very important role. Forecasting, AI-based forecasting is going to be a key area in the future. How can we reduce the time? See, customer is always going to ask for the lower cost and better service. This is not going to change, no matter what kind of type we are, which industry or what is the times, whether it is the disruptions or what is happening in the environment. So customer wants a better thing at lower price. The only way to do is that how to cut down the time, which is the cost. Can we make the faster delivery? Can we make the shorter shipments? Can we look at something which has not happened till now? So a lot of brain is going into this area. This is a lot of skill development is required by country as well as by the companies, that they have to really look at supply chain as a very, very key important, you can say, area, apart from finance and manufacturing, which all, of course, is there. But supply chain is the department which actually controls and monitors and delivers the entire, you can say, integration of the company objectives. Thank you.
I think you mentioned a few important things which maybe we will explore a little more. One was this importance of IT and AI and also the flow of information and visibility, which is very critical from a planning perspective. So I think if we can kind of explore that a little more, so maybe Rajasekhara, I'll kind of come back to you, that what are you seeing in terms of getting, first of all, a visibility end to end, because it's such a complex thing. The starting point is the visibility, and of course it doesn't end there. You also need to then do better planning, and then you also need to do a way in which you can course correct if there are external changes in a quick and agile manner, which Anil was mentioning in the opening. So if you can kind of share some of your thoughts and experience of the role of IT and the role of information use and dissemination of information for making your supply chain more agile and effective.
Thanks, Sudipta. Good morning, everybody. See, I mean, in the end, supply chain is important, no question about it. That's the reason why we have the 10th edition and we are sitting here together talking about it, right? But what is it the supply chain brings as a value to the organization, right? The visibility, end to end. This is the only department, only function which connects the customers to the back end of the company, right? Which is where the role becomes all the more important for us. There's a famous game, you can play it online also. There's a big game called Beer Game. It's an online version you have. You play that game, right? It tells you what exactly goes wrong if the supply chain is broken. When I say supply chain is broken, not logistics, not planning, visibility of information. We work in local optimization always. Any organization, plants want to optimize their cost, they want to produce the maximum, always constant. Whereas on the other side, the sales want to push the sales, the end of the quarter, end of the month, they want to dump the stocks into the market. These are all realities of life, right? The biggest value the supply chain brings is visibility. How do we connect? Okay. One thing what we have done in Apollo Tyres recently is bring IT and supply chain together under one head, so that we have seamless working with the IT, bring what customer wants to the plants, and you'd be amazed to see the power of this information, right? Once plant knows there's a big customer who's asking for a specific order at specific point in time, plants will never go back and say, no, I don't care about it, right? They would come back and say, they would turn their head, they would stand on their head and make sure the product is delivered on the time the customer wants. That's the power of information what we have. That's the power of visibility what we can bring. And many things, right? As agility was also one of the things what we discussed about. What COVID has done, good COVID is gone by, is disrupt everything that we know in supply chain, right? Many organizations, what I've known, have put the systems, processes aside, made sure the customer got what he wanted all the time. And there were a lot of learnings what we did. And the huge SAP systems, Oracle systems, which brought in rigidity or standardization, has been put on the wayside, and people started to develop on smaller tools, innovative tools to bring that agility. For example, what we are doing in Apollo Tyres today is we are segmenting the supply chain. There is a very small portion of our business which is high premium, where the customer is very discerning, very knowledgeable, he's willing to wait a couple of days to get the product. Whereas on the other side, we sell products to truck fleet owners, right, who don't wait. I need the tire anywhere in the country at any point in time. From that perspective, I feel very proud to say that tire industry has been a precursor to the hyper-local deliveries. Maybe most of you know, any city you go to, you can get a tire delivery in less than 2 hours, if you ask, from the company, right? That's the kind of systems what we have built for the bottommost pyramid, bottommost part of the pyramid, where the volume is big, the price is sensitive, the service in terms of what the customer wants is important. So that's what we have done in our this thing. And what we are also trying to do is understand the impact of something which we feel is totally unconnected to a tire industry. Like today, what do you expect when you go on a Blinkit or a Instamart or something and order? I want the product to be available at any given point in time and immediately, right? So we are trying to see what insights we can bring into the tire industry, how we can adapt ourselves to meet those expectations, because the customer is the same. He's the same one who's buying a curd from Blinkit, and he also wants a tire. He does not differentiate between the service what he gets there or here, which is what we have to redesign, rework, rethink about our supply chain. That's what we are trying to do in Apollo Tyres.
Thank you so much, Rajasekhara. I think a very important concept of segmentation of the supply chain you brought up, which is absolutely fundamental, because we need to have this strategy of horses for courses, depending on which kind of customer, whether they're willing to wait or pay a premium, or it's pretty much a commodity service and you just need it here and now, otherwise you just switch, right? I think the other important factor which you mentioned, and which we will probably drill down a little bit, is about merging your IT and supply chain together, because you want to really upskill the knowledge and everything of the people. So maybe I'll link that with the operational excellence, Ashwani, which you talked about, and switch to a slightly related topic about what does it impact, or how does it impact in terms of ensuring that your teams, your people are sufficiently upskilled, or what are the areas in which you would be focusing on for upskilling? Is it in their core engineering? Is it in their IT related areas? Is it that they need to be better collaborators, or it's a combination of all of this? And how would you go about kind of, proceeding in that direction? Maybe some of your thoughts will be very, very helpful.
So, the way we approach it in Boeing, and it's non-traditional way of doing it, before we go to the upskilling of what the team needs, you got to have a very good understanding of what your deliverables are. So at least once in 2 years, what I tell the team is, let's deconstruct the way we are doing things here, and then reconstruct it based on how do we see the next 4 or 5 years. Very often, what I've found is that people make it very complex. People are confused with all these tools, artificial intelligence and blockchain and so forth. All those tools are there for the right reason. But what is missing is the detail. Now, before I tell you how we do it further, I don't know how many people know that the real problems in the supply chain are not at the surface. They're hidden under the tier 2, tier 3 supply chain kind of a network. So I agree with some of the panelists that the visibility is the first right step. So if you simplify this and you just go away from all the complex way of doing or managing supply chain, you have to lay this out, what your end-to-end goal is. Where do you start from? And people say, hey, you have to deliver it to the customer. Absolutely. So what your start point is and what the end point is. Second is, the strategy, like where you are today and where you want to go. I'll give you an example, how we have seen this changing in the aerospace world. We started with offset. I mean, a lot of people in aerospace and defense will know that the only sell from India was, hey, you come to India for offset. And I thought that was a very bad way of selling what India can achieve. So that was stage 0 in my mind. We moved to stage 1. We said you should be in India for cost. And again, a lot of issues, getting the material in, taking it out, logistics costs were killing the competitiveness and so forth. But still, this very theme of India is good at offering the low-cost labor did sell. That is level 1. Then what is happening today is nobody is buying the argument that India is just about low-cost labor. So if you switch gears and think about why you should be in India, it is about technology, it is about supply chain resilience, and it is about productivity and the innovation that India has to offer. A lot of people did not buy this argument until about a couple of years back. And I'm telling you, without knowing this for most of the industries, this will be the case. A lot of people will still rely on the cost part of it. So if you have to move away from the cost sell to more technology, operational excellence, and so forth, then you have to design your supply chain accordingly. So we do something called a value stream mapping, which is a very simple way of laying out what the handoffs are. Because handoffs kill the operational efficiency most of the time. And then you identify where the gaps are, what the pain points are. And then you identify which technology, which tool is best suited for you. It could be machine learning, it could be artificial intelligence, very difficult to say without knowing the application. And that also determines what level of training is required for the team members. I have a very strong team of 200 people. They're considered to be the best in the world, not because, they just hired that way, but they're also trained and they're coached that way. Because I still believe 90% of what you do is approach, 10% is subject matter expertise.
I think that's a very, very insightful observation that, approach is going to be such an important thing, which is all about your process, your methodology, the way you are kind of looking at the problem statement. Anil, I'll come to you. You did mention about the fact that agility is so very important. And I'm trying to link the other pieces of conversation around IT, around forecasting, around skills, around segmentation of the supply chain. So any perspective from your side in an organization which is scaling very fast, right? How do you balance these, these all these considerations where you have to grow, as well as you have to immediately course correct if there is something which is going wrong in the market?
Thank you. We behave the way we are measured. Okay? So if you measure me, so I'm just backing up a little bit from the previous question of KPI. I'll just give my perspective on that. If I'm a manufacturing head, you measure me on utilization of machine. What is my likely behavior? Take on as much as possible and to produce. Not that whether it is required by the customer or not. If you measure me by tons per hour, I will produce the biggest item first and not the smallest one. It's a wrong way to measure. The good thing to measure would be what is the OTIF, on time in full, servicing of the order. If you measure that, then my behavior is to produce in the shortest time and give it to the customer, and that's how the money flows. By excellence, when I say manufacturing excellence, please do not measure manufacturing excellence by production. These are old ways. You will create inventories only, nothing else. Measure by how much short time I have been able to service a customer. That is the right measure. Do I have to sit? If you don't have an order, sit. It is cheaper than to keep producing and consuming resources. So that is as far as the KPIs are concerned. There is absolutely no conflict in KPIs. Why? Because all should be only connected with the customer. If customer wants black shirts, only black shirts will be produced. If he wants red, see, you look at around the market. You go and buy these off-season shirts or discounts. Do you get your size? You will get the largest and the smallest. You'll never get your size. Why? Because somebody is fixed in his mind, this is the ratio of the sizes and this must be produced. Not what the customer wants. So the KPI has to be what the customer wants, only that should be produced. Now, how the system has to be agile. Now, I'll give you an example. It may seem a little theoretical. We have implemented this in several companies, including last company which I'm working, Polycab. So what we do, we have factories, we have distributors, and we have our procurement. All the warehouses, central warehouse connected to the regional warehouse connected to the depots. It draws 2 items from the depot. That information goes to the previous one. It gets replenished. It's just like the water system in the city. You have a city water tank. It supplies your society water tank. So society water tank supplies to the flat. You draw 1 liter will be supplied. Which one? Whatever is drawn, that means whatever is sold. There's no forecast here. Absolutely zero forecast. Yes, you do need to keep some inventory somewhere. Yes, of course. How much? Depending on the lead time. As some of the speakers said, lead time is the main thing. And the only KPI which is good for across the departments is reduction of the lead time. Whatever you're doing, if you do a little less time, it improves cost, it improves turnaround time, improves everything. You are in finance department, you take 3 days to open LC, you will require 3 days more inventory. As simple as that. If I can do it 1.5 days, that much inventory goes down, that much turnaround time goes down. So there is no conflict in KPIs. If you are customer centric, it will be customer centric. And it is very simple. There are two, like you said, there are two types of products. One is standard product which is sold off the counter. One is tailor-made. So there are two measures only. For counter sale, it is availability. It should be 99 plus everywhere across the country. As far as the made to order, yes, it should be OTIF, on time in full. How much? 99 plus. If you have systems like that, that's all you need. So there is very little conflict. And things are far simpler. All you talk about AI, systems, etc. are just enablers. You should know where you want to go, put all these enablers to be there.
Ashwani, you want to?
See, I want to extend, maybe. Yeah. See, I agree with what you just said on the KPIs, but we do it a little differently. So imagine, so of course it has to start with the customer. So you have to measure whether you're meeting the customer expectations or not. But let me give you a scenario from the aerospace world. We are delivering parts from India to our production facility. So the parts received in the US are 100% quality and 100% on time. Does that give you confidence in what you're doing in terms of operations? How many people in this room think it's a yes, and how many people think it's a no or a maybe? The answer is not yes. And that is the difference we have. Because what may be happening is that a supplier that delivers the part may be doing tons of rework on the part and somehow making it compliant. So what you see going to the customer might show up as compliant, but the way you have done it may not be the best way of doing it. And that goes against the operational excellence that we're talking about. So what we do is we start with the customer KPI, and then you start moving inward. So you go to the supplier and see what was the quality. For example, if quality is the KPI, and we have different ways of doing it, what is the quality as measured in India? Then you go further to the right, how it's as produced, and then go all the way up to the sub-tier supply chain. Now the only issue is you can't work towards the first pass yield or tier 2, tier 3 supply chains until you fix the core customer piece of it. But majority of the failures that happen in the supply chain world, in my experience, happens because we just focus on the customer KPIs. It has to go deeper into the organization, and that is how you measure operations.
Maybe I want to respond to that, right? In-end customer is important, right? He's the only guy who keeps us in business, right? Rest of the things, you have to make it happen because you need to make money, you need to sustain the business, right? That's where I would like to not differ, but have a point of view which is slightly different from what you have. Because in businesses, manufacturing is fine, right? Because we have a standard, any change would take a lot of time to do. But when you go to consumer industry, for example, the customer is like very flimsy, right? He'll go to the shop, he'll decide this or this product. You have to give that choice to him, right? And that's where customer becomes most important stakeholder in the game.
Sudipta, just to add some of the points, we talked about data, we talked about visibility, we talked about OPEX. Now, supply chain is not what happens in the four walls of our companies. It's what happens with the entire ecosystem. So I just want to draw attention of the panelists as well as everywhere here that we got to look at everybody who is in the chain. So if today the truck driver is not on GPS or he switches off mobile, all what we talked about goes for a toss. So how do we ensure that it is intact? If we're sourcing from 17,000, 18,000 different auto component vendors, if their barcode or QR code is not compatible with rest of the ecosystem, many of what we talked about goes for a toss. So on one hand, we can think about that supply chain is relatively very simple, no rocket science, that you got to pick a box and deliver where it is supposed to be. But if you actually think back, to make this basic works, we got to get every player in the chain work on the same tuning and need to have everything connected. And then therefore that ecosystem becomes very important for all the excellent stuff we talked about. And then often we ignore what's outside our four walls of the factory or our organization. And it's extremely important because that's the weakest link as I see it.
No, absolutely. And I think that kind of very nicely brings me to the next very important topic of conversation. We are always talking about the scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. And that is intrinsically related or linked with whatever we are discussing in the supply chain and primarily in the logistics side. So wanted to kind of explore this a little more, and maybe Rajesh, I'll kind of reach out to you. You did mention about the flow of information, the forecasting and everything else, but what are you seeing that apart from just talking about it, which is very fashionable to talk, is there anything real which is happening in the ground in your industry, in various organizations you're associated with, or there is a scope for it to do that? It's just that we need to kind of get matured in that space, because one way or other it is going to come and hit us anyways.
Yeah. See, one more area which is really emerging and demanding actually on all of us is the environment. So we have to make this world a better place to live. So this is putting a constraint on the supply chain, and what we did in JK Tyre, I'll share with you that transportation, if you see a carbon emission, the maximum carbon emission happens because of the transport, road transport basically. And so what we did is the usage of multimodal transportation. And this is what the government is also focusing on. Using of ships. I'm talking about the internal movement within India. Okay. See, export naturally happens through ships if you are sending the goods, apart from the small items like by air. Otherwise, normally the export happens through ships only. But within India, the incoming raw material or the movement of the finished goods from south to north, we use multimodal transportation, the truck, then the ship, and then the truck or the train. And whether it is south to north or south to east. So both the sectors actually are working. It started recently, and we were one of the first ones to start and encourage the vendors to do it because it saves cost. We have seen 20-25% cost reduction happens because of this using the ship. Number one. Number two, carbon emission goes down. You get the carbon credits. Number three, one you can say slightly disadvantage, but it can be worked out, is that the transit time which is taken normally by ship is slightly low. But however, if you do the better planning of inventories, then because of cost saving, if you calculate total cost, it is actually lower. So rather than keeping a stock of say 10 days, just make it 12 days, but the saving is much more than what inventory cost increased. So this has helped. Another thing which is actually government is also working on this logistics parks. So this is one area where all of us have to redefine our entire logistics or the supply chain network. That these multi-modal logistics parks are being constructed, where whether it is a train, whether it is ship movement within India, I'm talking about, okay, or by road, because all the three combinations are required from door to door. So this is one area where a lot of, in fact, the aim which the government has taken, Gati Shakti, is that reduce the logistics cost by half. So from 14% of GDP, what we talk about in India, bring it down to maybe 7 or 8%. It is possible. See, we have seen our own company that diesel cost in last 4 years, if you compare, has increased by almost 50 to 60%. But our logistics cost has gone down by almost 10%. So despite diesel increasing, the cost can reduce if you use the innovative ways, if you use the multimodal transportation, if we really improve on the efficiency in the entire area.
So it's not just a utopian view of doing good for the planet. It's also about the here and now, that how do you actually be more effective and productive and cost efficient. We have now less than 10 minutes, and we did a promise within ourselves that we'll at least give some time for the audience to ask questions, because I think that's going to be a very important part of it. So maybe this is a good time, with your permission, if I can ask the audience to ask any questions. Please go ahead. Somebody can give the mic on.
Hello. 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 Yes, my name is Vishal Sanghi. I'm from Bombay. Last week there was a Industry 4.0 future workforce. There is a G20 event where our Minister of Mangal Pravat Lodha has completely said like we want to skill new our student actually. So my question about I want to connect through your your view actually. How the senior management, mid management, operation management get a time for the new knowledge to get what is the best practicing happening in the world, either in technology, operation, so it can be shared. So what is my, I want to know whether, the minister told that how you can bring student to the, industry. So I want to know whether we can connect the students, they can take the knowledge, broad knowledge from the worldwide and share filter knowledge with the, your team and management. So they can go through it actually. So they can also become aware about your operation. They can future employable, understand things. So I want to know how this reskilling practicing, happening, and whether it can be examination also happening. You spend a time. Your team is spending time for 1 week or 10 days. So I want to please give something note about this.
So I think the question is around upskilling, about getting students, about getting them interned into the organization. I think that's the nature of the question.
Yeah, because we do the innovation, but we found difficult about drivers for those innovations. So those way actually we can building a industry 4.0 workforce for the future.
Yeah. So I think as far as Boeing is concerned, we check all these boxes that you're talking about, and I think I agree with you that it is one of the best ways of doing it. So number one. We have university relationship program. I'm the executive focal for NIT Suratkal. I've been to IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, and other places. So we do share some of these practices and get the students engaged. And as a part of this engagement plan, we have some funding available. So we encourage students to do the projects which are tailored to the new technology. So that's one part of it. Second, we encourage the internship. Okay, I do have some interns in my team as we speak, and very bright people, bright students. I think the good part is they're very anxious and eager to learn. So we assign them some projects around sustainability as well. Third, we also do externship programs, which is getting some of the students from the college to a supplier, just to expose them to the technology and so forth. So absolutely, 100% in agreement. And it is as the last point I'll make is, the world is changing every single day. My message to my team is, unless we are educated, we can't, we're all like 20, 30 years of experience, we can't go back to the schools again. But there are multiple ways of educating yourself. We have moved from the touch labor, competitive advantage to technology advantage, where we have, if you come and see the Boeing supply chain in India, there are all kinds of robotics and virtual reality industry 4.0 in use. So unless we keep ourselves and the team educated, we'll miss the ball.
Just,
Sudipta,
I will add to that. There are certain institutes which are directly collaborating. What I was talking about, this design, etc., which I spoke about, is based on theory of constraint. So I have been designing systems on theory of constraint, and I also teach in some of these colleges. And some of these colleges have started a course on theory of constraint. We have distribution of network and designing of supply chain, designing of manufacturing, etc. So there is an active collaboration now.
Just to answer specifically, at Mahindra Logistics, we're not looking only at the white-collar interns. It's also important to look at how we are upskilling the blue-collar workforce, because that's where the masses are. And we are actively engaged with different government organizations for programs like NEEM, NACS, etc., where people are engaged on the job for a defined period, and that's where they move from unskilled to skilled, and then they can continue to work with us, or they are eligible to work elsewhere. So that's very actively worked on.
Sure. There was a question from that end, yeah.
Hello. Okay. My question is specifically for Ashwani sir. Ashwani sir, you mentioned about the deals which happened, obviously the aircraft deals we are seeing. So you told that it's not based upon the costs, but it's upon the delivery. Could you please share some light upon how you are ensuring the deliveries for this?
So I'm going to answer 50% of your question because 50% of that aircraft deal went to Airbus, which is a competitor. So I'm not saying that deal happened because of ability to deliver. What I'm telling you is the backlog in the aircraft industry is like 7 years to 10 years. And the customers want the product tomorrow. So how do you prioritize? How do you deliver it ahead of other customers? So in our world, we do it, we say, hey, can we deliver 30 aircrafts a month or 40, 50? And with Boeing, not just pandemic, some of you would have heard about the 737 MAX story and so forth. A lot of things happened which has dragged the rates down. So I think for us, it's more like a catch-up on the supply side. And if the customers cannot wait, what I'm saying is, and it's not a specific statement, but if the customers cannot wait for delivery for 3-4 years or so forth, they'll go to somebody else who can deliver. Okay? So that's the point I was trying to make.
So take in your daily case also, right? You want to order something for your home, you go to Swiggy or Amazon. What would you do? You select a product, your primary product is not available, you would obviously go to the secondary one, right? It's the same thing, right? The availability, right? More the product availability, as Anil has mentioned earlier, you have to strive towards making 99% of the time the product to be available at the point of purchase. Only then it makes sense to the customer. More so in industries which are customer interface like FMCG, like pharmaceuticals, etc. A little bit less for heavy engineering because the product is customized and it doesn't happen overnight, right? So that's the game.
I'll just try to answer your question from another perspective. See, these are made to order. One is standard and one is made to order. What Boeing etc. they're making, they are not standard product which can be sold like this. So they're made to order. So when I say made to order, the only way I can make it in time when I'm free. My hands are free, I'm not doing unnecessary things. Okay? So we have implemented this on time in full, in the sense, supposing I have to deliver on 20th of January, then I work backwards, how much is the lead time, and I start there. I don't start early, I don't start late. So that I deliver exactly at the same point. Okay? Don't consume unnecessary resources. Resources are kept with me and ready to make. It's like I have all the ingredients, I'm making vada, idli or something, and the moment you want, I make it for you and give it to you. He wants uttapam, I make uttapam and give it to him. But I'm free. I don't keep making and keeping in stock what you don't need. And with this way of handling, for last 2 years, Polycab 50% is made to order, 50% is standard products. Okay? So made to order last 2 years, we have been on OTIF 100% last 2 years consecutively. 2 years without a fall, 100%. That means delivery on time. If it is 21st of September, 21st, not 20th, not 19th. Exactly on that. And that's how the systems have to be made. It is possible.
There was one more question. I think there are many questions, but we'll prioritize. So maybe you can randomly pick and choose.
Hi, I'll take question.
Okay, there is already a mic, okay?
Yeah.
So it's a connecting question to Mr. Anil and Mr. Rajasekhara. Do you think going forward, say 5 to 7 years down the line or 10 years down the line, it is the supply chains that will be competing in future? For example, if I walk into a grocery store or convenience store, if I don't find a Parle-G or if I find any other cookie, I'll probably go for it. So it is the loss of Parle-G supply chain, actually. Is it going to be the case?
Absolutely.
The supply chains will be competing, or how
so
is it?
there's something called a customer tolerance time. Okay? What does that mean? If a customer is ready to wait for my product or he's not ready to wait for my product. That is the distinction. If a customer is not ready to wait for my product, it has to be standard available. If he is wait for ki mera wala pink chahiye and he's ready to wait for a week, then it's a product which is customized. Okay? There is no conflict. The only target, again I'm saying, what is my target of my company is to produce and supply before my competitor. So I will supply faster than my competitor is and that is only way if I'm free to do it. That means I'm not engaged in unnecessary things. Again, go back to customer centricity. I only do things which a customer needs. Nothing more, nothing less. And that is the sweet spot where your cost will be the best.
So let me just add another example to that, right? Today, what is it that you're willing to wait for? Something which exactly meets your specification, which is innovative. For example, you would wait for an iPhone today. Would you wait for a feature phone? No, you wouldn't. And more we progress, more we evolve, the space for innovative branded products will come down. Most of the products will become commoditized. Okay, for example, in pharma industry, if you see 5 years back in the US, 40% of the products were patented where the manufacturer innovator had a specific pricing power, where the patient would have waited. But now the space has shrunk. It has become 6 to 7% only innovative products. Remaining 93, 94% of the products are generic commodities. When it is a commodity kind of a product, then it's supply chain which makes a difference. When it is an innovative product, then you can ask for whatever you want, right? You can ask the customer to wait, place an order 6 months before and wait for it, he will wait. That's where the difference. The more the world progresses, the differentiation between the product will become lesser and lesser in terms of features, and that's where supply chain will make a bigger play.
And just to add to that point, I think what we're also seeing is that the ecosystems will compete with each other. Not so much as one organization competing with another organization. I mean, even if you take something as simple as a car, you would not only purchase a car because of the product features only, you would also purchase it because you will see what is the after sales service you are getting. If you want to have a mechanic which can quickly repair something, will you get it when you want it, right? And hence, and even for the manufacturing of the car itself, the OEM will need 5 other players to work very, very closely. I mean, if your semiconductor chips are not coming on time, you'll not be able to even produce it. So to that extent, we are seeing that as the complexity is going up, these ecosystems will become more important, and supply chain is going to be in the front and center of that ecosystem, which is going to compete with each other.
See, one more point I'll add here is that what you are asking about the competition of supply chain to each other, like different companies. See, supply chain is basically you can say that nodal agency. They don't produce. Okay, they only transfer product from one place to another. Okay, so it is not only supply chain; it is the entire organization. They have to be aligned. Be it manufacturing, be it you can say plants or even transportation, everything. So everyone has to be absolutely clear that it is a customer requirement which we have to meet. Okay. See, it may be specific product, it may be general product, whatever it is. Whenever the customer desires, okay, the product must be available. And the lead time, how can we work together to cut down on the lead times? The faster delivery basically means better availability at lower cost. So it is basically the whole organization has to be aligned to customers' requirement. It's not only supply chain. So it is basically for the entire this thing. Otherwise, the companies, they just go out of the business. If you see some companies, they are prominent business. They were #1 player in the world. After 5 years or 10 years, the technology changes, the market changes, the environment changes, and they are nowhere in existence. Yeah, see Kodak, classical case. Nokia, what happened? World leader, 95% market share, nowhere. So all of us have to be realigned. In fact, not only supply chain, but I am saying each and everyone in the organization to what is going to happen in the market. Can you create the new demand? It's not necessary that customer knows what he wants. Many times customer doesn't know what he wants. He goes, हाँ भाई चाहिए ये चाहिए किस type का कोई, and if you can get convinced, if you can sell the value proposition to him, he will purchase.
Take the next
Hi,
question.
yes. I have a basic question regarding these. I mean, most of these supply chains are very efficient, you know, as far as large Fortune 500 companies are concerned, but the small scale sector, MSME sector is not able to be that productive with that because of the digitization, automation, financing, etc. And with the green regulations coming up, the small scale sector will be definitely hit, you know, because of their costs will definitely go up. We are already seeing the tomato prices going up, you know, but as far as, with the supply chain, but as far as the big retailers, MNCs are concerned, their supply chain are a lot more, you know, sophisticated. So how can we make, and MSME sector is the most, important as far as jobs and going forward in the, for the economy is concerned. So how can we make that more efficient and productive? Thanks very much.
See, in our world in India, 24% of our supply base, that is out of 374 odd, are MSMEs. Okay? The work that MSMEs can do cannot be done by bigger players like Tata. They won't be competitive at all. Now, what you're saying is partly true. We've experienced that there is some level of handicap because of lack of capital, but that is going away. So, you know, I was talking about robotics and everything else. So if you go to Boeing supply chain in India and MSMEs, there are players who are playing with high level of technology. Okay, and there are different ways of, we can talk the whole day on how you can secure funding. I'll also tell you that at the global level, we award 10 suppliers every year out of thousands of suppliers, and MSMEs in India have won the supplier awards at the global level. And some of them are technology related. So it's a mixed experience as far as we're concerned, but I think that disadvantage will go away.
Yeah. So just one thing, I think it's more about the markets in India and the MSME supplying to the consumer in India. Watch out for the space on Gati Shakti, MMLPs and all that space, right? Today, the biggest challenge what MSMEs have is logistics cost. They don't control, they are bound by what the transporters say. If you want safe product, take a container body across the country, full body, full truck, right? The Gati Shakti would lead to standardization on smaller volumes. Like you probably would have 1 cubic meter boxes like what Agarwal packets and movers would have, right? So that's where the space is going to be. That's where it should help. Larger companies may not benefit as much as the smaller companies would on Gati Shakti and NLP implementation, right?
So just a slightly different take, I think Ashwani talked about that MSMEs are competitive in many ways. So if MSME exists just because they knew somebody and they are into business, those kind of MSMEs will get wiped out with all these things happening. But if you have product knowledge or even process knowledge, there are enough examples that companies have not only survived, but they have thrived. So they have to figure out what's that secret recipe that they're doing better than others. And then he gave examples of companies working even better than Tatas, Mahindras, and so on. So if you are in business only because of some connections, you need to be worried about it. If you develop your USP, there's no need to worry.
Also, being MSME is no disadvantage at all. You don't need AI to compete. See, we sometimes try to optimize a segment of the supply chain, like logistics. I want to make it absolutely. But it's a chain, as you said. And what is the strength of the chain? The weakest link. Okay? Don't put your money on the strongest link. Put your money on the weakest link. Okay? Otherwise, you'll be wasting money. Making it more automated while your manufacturing lags is of no use. Don't put your money there. Only put the money where it. And believe me, a little exaggeration, I'll tell you, you can manage the full thing in an SME in an Excel sheet if you know how to go about it. You don't need AI. AI is okay, it's good, it is an enabler when your business grows to that. But with this, and if you do the right thing, produce only what the customer makes, keep inventories low, and produce good quality. Quality is given. There's no question. Nobody can stay in the market if your quality is not good. So quality is just like oxygen. You have to be quality conscious and you have to produce all those things. But it is not a big disadvantage. You can win even with small wares.
Any other question? Yes.
Yeah, I'll go for a quick one.
I would like to check with the gentleman who mentioned Apollo Tyres and somebody sitting next to him about JK Tyres. These particular industries, how do you manage to get the data happening at the place where the sale happens? How does that come into your system, into the depot or whatever?
Yeah. See, most of the companies, in fact, we have implemented SAP. So it is real time. So the moment the billing is done to the dealer from the depot, the information is available in the central server. Okay. And what we had done is that the entire process of order delivering, we had done the automation. So what we do that in the night, because during the day the transactions keep on happening. So during the night, the computer calculates what is required. You maintain the stock level. So we have defined for each SKU at depot and feeder what is the stock level required for that, depending on the history, depending on your future promotion, if you have anything. So based on the inventory levels, the moment any stock is, you can say, sold during that day, whatever quantity, the system calculates what is required, the delivery channel it makes to the feeder. Automatic, no manual intervention. So whatever is required is, the demand goes to the feeder. Same way feeder also across India, they give the demand to the plant. And plant, so everyone gets in the morning on daily basis what is the, you can say, delivery challan prepared already, that what I need to execute, that's all. So what happens that you have made it absolutely live across India on daily basis. So you have cut down on the time, number one. Number two, execution happens on the same day. So they have to start sending the goods. And in case the tire is, or it is not available in the plant, naturally the planning gets the trigger that stock out has happened or this much quantity is required because we maintain the safety stock. So they start producing. So how we do the automation of the information flow, it really helps in meeting the customer demand.
By the way, that's a trade secret we cannot share. Okay. Sorry. No, no.
Actually, he is talking about the depot, which I understand. Extension of SAP up to the depot is clearly understood. Beyond the depot, where the transaction is happening, how do you get that information?
See, in this case, yeah. See, some of the companies, okay, again, like what he says, business secret, but however, what companies have done, see, I'm not talking about now JK Tyre. Yeah, so I'm not talking about JK Tyre, I'm talking about in general what companies have done, that they maintain the stock of dealers in the system, okay. So this is basically based on the mutual trust between the dealer and the company, because dealer must have trust that you should not misuse my own information. See, it is sharing information with somebody else. So some companies, they have done this work that they maintain the secondary sale of dealer. See, I'm not talking about the company sale now. Dealer to his distributor or retailer or to the customer. So they maintain the stock, and what they have done, that they say to the dealer that you don't worry about your inventories. You don't worry about your stock outs. So if you maintain the stock, what will happen that whatever customer is coming to you, you will have your 100% order fulfillment. So that way they have been able to sell this. And see, then a lot of issues come basically, the different dealers, different software, how do you integrate, all those issues come. But it can be done. Some companies have already tried it.
I do precisely that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a standard thing. Every industry does it. The principle is the closer you go to the customer, the more reliable the information is, and hence you are able to benefit from it, right? So many of the companies now, they have come with intelligent tires, right? They put a chip in the tire, so you know the wear and tear of the tire. So you prepare for the tire to come back, the owner to come back to you for a replacement. It has started, seeding is starting right now. It will take time to evolve, but well, that's the direction we're going. But we don't do anything different from what they're doing. So.
Okay, maybe one last question we'll take, and yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a humble request. If you have any question, please raise your hand and kindly do not prompt the question in between. We have one question from here because he has been waiting for the past 10 minutes to ask one.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Congratulations on such an engaging session. I think you don't see it that often when there are panel discussions. Hi, my name is Sahil. See, we've spoken of resilience, agility, and technology-led for a while in terms of the problems and the strategies to solve in the supply chain. Sustainability has always been seen as a collateral in terms of whenever there is either cost benefit or customer first, we get sustainability, on the sides like a CSR probably for an organization. Are there, in the changing times, decisions that organizations such as yours are taking which are sustainability led, which might impact the cost at some level, but I mean, given the larger picture, are we taking some decisions which are led by sustainability?
Yeah, there are, as Rajesh had mentioned earlier, right? Everybody is looking at multimodal. It's an obvious case. There are challenges there, right? What happens is, everybody knows, but the availability, the frequency, the cost is a challenge. But why should there be a challenge on the cost? For example, what the precursor to Jio Reliance mobiles have done, they anticipated the cost would fall so much, and they said we'll offer a 40 paisa per minute call right away. Okay, we are waiting for that sort of a disruption to happen for sustainability to become more accessible. Today, the thing is, anything new comes with a cost, additional cost. Is the customer willing to pay for it? No, customer is not willing to pay for it. Is he going to wait for it? No, he's not going to wait for it. He wants this problem to be solved now. So we have to find, as an industry, solutions to meet those expectations, right? For example, today, EVs are there across the country, right? There's ample amount of EVs, but still there's a resistance in the organizations to move to those EVs. The problems are genuine. But at the same time, you got to take that step ahead, right? So we have to find that balance. Sustainability has to make sense, will make sense. In fact, it's not very far away. We're at crossroads. Very shortly, maybe 3-5 years time, you would see large part of the last mile getting converted, right? It's happening. It's just that we have not seen that far, but it will happen very soon.
I think your question was, are companies doing something about it, not waiting for cost and so on? So I think to answer, at Mahindra Logistics, we have already launched an electric last mile fleet branded as EDEL, and that was putting capacity ahead of demand. So somebody had to make that shift happen. We're also seeing at the lower end CNG getting increasing proportion. I think there is always this dilemma of CNG versus petrol price difference, etc. But that is happening. We are waiting for the larger trucks to have an alternate fuel. So I think right now there's a structural issue in terms of what's the sustainable option there. As an organization, we've already signed up on SBTi, that is Science-Based Targets, and we have committed to be carbon neutral by 2040. And right now, as we speak, all our new warehouses, we have put solar, we have put zero liquid discharge, and they're all platinum rated. And we're not waiting for customer to tell us that we want it. That's a standard offering that this will be there if you want to work with us. And then our belief is that there will be companies which will sign up for that. And more often than not, at least in the near term, it will be cost neutral. So that's already happening.
I think just to add to that, I think organizations are first of all trying to measure what is the scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. And like you do an optimization where you optimize on cost and time and everything, emissions become an important aspect of your optimization problem, which means that in your decision making, your emissions become part of the solution mix. That is one. Second is circularity of supply chain is getting important, where you're looking at the reverse part of it in terms of reusing some of the wastes or reusing some of the materials, and that is becoming critical for us. So we also seeing a lot of circularity, at least in a very serious way in many of the sectors.
So, yeah, like you all guys are at the top of the supply chain level, and like the sir said, working on the weakest link. So I would like to have your thoughts on how the truck driver, which is like driving the, like technically saying he is the backbone of our economy because he is driving the goods from place A to B. And like in other countries, we see that it is a respectable job, and like people tend to like go into it, like taking science and commerce. It is a specific industry also where people go to institutions to specifically learn and further pursue this career. So like in India, it is not treated as that career. It is treated as last option, or like if nothing else works, I'll go do this. So what are your thoughts, and like how can we improve this?
I think I'll take on behalf of all the logistics companies here. You are absolutely right. They are the unsung heroes on all the supply chain that we have. And we say that for us to make in India, we have to move in India efficiently, and these are the real heroes who make the wheels turn. There's a long way to go on that, but there are companies which are working to make things better. So we just had an event last week where Nitin Gadkari launched one book which was about drivers as Desh Chalak. And so we are taking steps in terms of giving them health benefits. We're talking about scholarship for the children. And at a very brass tack level, I think, and that's where I think all the OEMs and shippers also would be of great help, that when the drivers are waiting for the trucks to get loaded and unloaded, the basic needs have to be taken care of. So right now, that profession has a question mark on dignity, and therefore people don't want to come in there. And then 20 to 30% of the fleet at a national level is waiting for drivers today, and that's a reality. Now, collectively, everybody needs to come together to solve it. as a company, we are doing our bit, but I think everybody needs to be conscious about it, that are we taking care of these people? Because if tomorrow they stop working, everything is going to be at a standstill. So I think we need to solve for that. And right now, that's the weakest link. You're absolutely right.
Thank you, sir. And like sir said, 30-40% vehicles are like empty at a time in India, and it is like a huge cost for the transporter. Not a promotion, but at Signo, we have 3 lakh plus driver database, and like we work on operations management also. So like hope to connect everyone.
So,
I think.
Last question, please.
Maybe, yeah, very quickly if you can ask the question.
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you. My name is Gaurav. Good morning, everyone. Just want to understand when it comes to transportation, and we have been talking about this, but what are some of the key areas where you feel that there is still efficiency that can be driven or business value that can be extracted? Let's keep it
So how, apart from the waiting for truck drivers, where do the trucks spend most of their time? Detention, waiting to be loaded, unloaded, right? And that could go as high as 20% of the time in a month, right? So that's one area. That's where we OEMs and shippers have a big responsibility to do, whereby we manage to turn the trucks around faster. So we're working on a project where we commit to the transporters to say that if your truck hits the gate, in 2 hours we'll send it back, right? And can you offer something in return to that, right? Because he's going to save time. So that's what we're working on. So that's the biggest inefficiency in the system, and nobody sees it. It's a sunk cost. Everybody accepts that.
In addition to it, there is a huge amount of dead run or empty run. So today we do have issues of there are producing centers and there are consuming centers, and there is no equal in terms of what goes in comes out. And then there is, I think government is also working on that global database where at any point in time we'll know where are the trucks waiting and where is the load waiting for the trucks. So that information asymmetry, if that gets solved, the empty runs would get minimized. It'll be good for cost and it'll be good for environment as well, because empty run is carbon footprint with no benefit to anyone. So in addition to what Rajasekhara mentioned, this is the second inefficiency which exists in the system as we speak.
And see, lastly, it may not be directly related to what you said, but when you are in the export world, mainly to United States, I don't know if you've heard about CTPAT, Customs and Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. So you'll see more and more US custom audits happening in India, because you can't control, the drugs and all those things getting into states by just looking at the ship and all. So there's a full-blown audit. So the transportation network will become very important. We went through one audit in Coimbatore, where we went all the way up to the truckers and discovered that some of the goods were taken to the village also. They were using it as an umbrella to have food and all that stuff. So those things will come into picture, and there'll be a need for us to become more compliant to the global norms.
So thank you very much, for asking so many questions. I don't know if the mic is on. Mic is switched off. So thank you very much for such a participative session with so many questions, and thank you my fellow panelists for such a intellectually stimulating and content-rich conversation. And hopefully we will have more interaction going out of the room as well. So thanks once again, and thank you organizers for making sure that it happens. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was truly an engaging discussion. May I request all the panelists to kindly stay back. I would request Mr. Manoj Nair, Senior Director, ETH, to join us on this stage and present a token of gratitude and appreciation to all the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, please put your hands together for all the panelists. Mr. Rajasekhara, Reddy, Avthu, Mr. Anil, Shipley, Mr. Rajesh, Gupta, Mr. Ashwani, Bhargava, Mr. Prasanna, Pahade, and our wonderful moderator, Mr. Sudipta Ghosh. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we should keep our claps rolling as we honor our panelists. Thank you.